Hello, welcome to Revive and Rise. This is your host, Melody Parrish, and I am here with a very special guest, Joshua Shea. He is a porn addiction and betrayal specialist. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today, Joshua. And let's go ahead and get started.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, Melody.
Yeah. So you say you've written two books.
4 books, actually.
Four books. Sorry. Wow, you've been busy. And are they all on porn addiction and betrayal?
Yep, they all take a different look. The first one is more of a straight ahead memoir about my addiction, especially the last several years that I had it. And my second book was about betrayal trauma that I co-wrote with a licensed marriage and family therapist uh, for people going through the challenge of finding out that their partner is a pornography addict and the feelings that that elicits, the betrayal, the lying. Um, that's when I also started working with partners and got my certification as a betrayal trauma coach. My third book was actually about the pandemic and how the online world changed so rapidly in the area of pornography and pornography addiction. Uh, in my past, I was a journalist and I found I could see this was going to happen. And I said, I'm going to write about this before it happens. So I look really smart when it does. And it did. And then my final book was a short guide to the symptoms of pornography addiction. That came out a few years ago, and I'm working on a longer version to be released soon, hopefully.
Oh, nice. Well, that seems like very you're very educated. And so
In this area, don't ask me how a car runs, but I do know stuff here.
yeah, me neither. So, a lot of people there's a lot of misconception and totally not understanding at all
Mhm.
about porn addiction. So I am so glad that you're here. Can you explain that to us a little
Yeah,
bit more?
absolutely. First, we have to stand from the point of view that addiction is addiction is addiction. Whether it's porn or cigarettes or gambling or heroin. The same thing is happening in people's brains who have addiction. It's a chase for chemicals that make you feel better, that help you cope. We become addicts in life, usually early on, because we don't develop the proper coping skills that we need. You find something like porn or food or methamphetamine that helps you get through the day, you don't have to develop those coping skills. Obviously, every addiction has its own unique side effects. You will probably go bankrupt as a gambling addict, or you'll probably have a heart attack as a food addict before you have one as a porn addict. You'll probably get lung cancer as a cigarette addict before you get it as a video game addict. Uh, but the same machinations are happening in the head as far as the search for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. These are the pleasure chemicals that addicts are after. With pornography, I can speak to my own story, and I can speak to the story of many of the men and women who I talk to. Almost all of us become addicts somewhere between the age of about 12 and 16, not coincidentally when puberty is happening, when you're starting to get these feelings, because at 13 years old, male or female, you don't understand brain chemistry. You understand that looking at people doing naked things, or naked people doing naked things, and then satisfying yourself while you watch that feels good. It allows you to escape. You don't have anxiety. You don't have stress. You detach from the world when you do that. That is the coping mechanism for a lot of people these days. And that has blown up huge ever since we have gone from dial up internet to high speed internet. That's what truly changed everything. And I think now that there are so many people struggling with pornography, we're moving a little bit away from the stereotypes of, oh, this is a bad person. This is a pervert. This is somebody who was raised the wrong way. This
Mhm.
is somebody who's a sex freak. Anything like that, because what we're now finding is that every, both genders, every age group, every religion, every political stance, no matter where you are in the world, if you can get on the internet, uh, you've got the entire history of pornography at your fingertips. And when I was 13, 14 years old and just becoming an addict, the toughest part for me was getting my hands on it because it
Mhm.
was behind the counter at the 7-Eleven. And now, because of high speed internet, it's just a matter of what device do you want to watch it on. And once we got these devices, suddenly, the pornography industry marketed itself. And keep in mind, it's a business. It marketed itself to the straight white male because going back to the mid 50s, the straight white male was the only consumer that the pornographers could count on.
Oh, wow.
Straight
That's
white
so
straight
interesting.
straight white males went to the adult theaters. Straight white males went to the adult bookstores. However, once we got high-speed internet coming into our homes, suddenly women who would never be caught dead in one of those places were watching porn. Suddenly religious people who would never be caught dead in one of those places were watching porn. And that's where we saw the explosion was not that the straight white men, it really blew up. It's that every other demographic blew up. And I truly believe, given a few more years, men and women are probably going to have about the same rates, similar to most other addictions out there. Um, and that's really, where things stand. People are, depending on what survey you look at or what poll you look at, roughly between 12 and 18% of the population qualifies as having an addiction to pornography. Although I almost want to think it's more sexualized media than
Mhm.
pornography because you could be looking at people in their swimsuits. You could be looking at, people just wearing skimpy outfits. You could be watching someone who is covered head to toe except for their eyes. It's all pornography because one of the largest parts about pornography is how you use it.
Oh,
One of the biggest questions I get over the years has been, well, my wife or my husband or my boyfriend or my girlfriend made me some adult material, but that's not porn, right? That's why do you say that? Well, because I know them. So all the people who work in the pornography industry aren't actually making porn because they all know each other. If I look at an OnlyFans page or I go to a club and see a stripper and I know them, does that mean it's not pornography? It's like, no. If you use the material the way that you would use it normally, it's still pornography, whether you know the people or not. And I think that in society now, we are just starting to reckon with the idea of, hey, maybe everybody still likes to lie that they don't look at this stuff. But despite the fact that 90% of men do and 60% of women do, we like to pretend we don't look at this stuff. And we thankfully are starting to move away from that. We're starting to move away from the, oh my God, you're the 1 in 100 people who uses pornography. You're so weird and gross. Because it's more like, 1 in 5 people don't use pornography these days since it's so available, especially with the 40 and under year old. 40-year-olds and younger who grew up with the internet, who don't really remember a world without it at this point. Um, they've had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
The millennials, the early generation Zers, they have kind of had to learn the hard way. And that's why, aside from just the coaching, I write the books. I
Mhm.
do a lot of online speaking. I do attend conferences and that kind of stuff to talk about, because just simple education is such a huge, huge part of it. That have it or don't have it, we're in a place now where everybody needs to know about it and what it really is. It's not the disease you get when you can't get a girlfriend.
Right, right. Yeah, and there were so many stereotypes about that you just hit on, and now it seems like in the present time, you're like, why do people think that? You know, when you break it down like that, and it's very important to really understand. I love what you said about the education is key because it is. When you break it down to the bare bones, it's just like anything else. It's
Yeah.
just like being addicted to coffee or alcohol or anything.
And as a porn addict, one of the, I'm kind of glad I went through it so I can understand it better for the people I'm helping. But what a lot of people who use pornography recreationally don't realize is that our brains are nothing like theirs. We are not looking to uh, watch people have sex. We are not looking to have an orgasm. We are not looking for the next pretty person. We are looking for whatever it is we need to find so we can get that chemical hit so we can keep going that day. And you talk to most porn addicts will tell you they'll spend 30 minutes trying to look for the final piece to watch. But 5 minutes after they're done, they can't even tell you what it was because it wasn't important in that time. And pornography addicts, when they are using at their peak, it is basically similar to being intoxicated. As far as what's happening in their brain. We need to respect that it has, you can have any moral stance you want on sexuality, on sharing your body, on anything that has to do with the morality side of it, and that is fine. I don't really get into debating that with people because at the end of the day, whoever you pray to, whoever you vote for, whatever your skin color, you still have this disease of addiction and it needs to be dealt with.
Yes, absolutely. And so now I want to talk about the shame maybe,
Mhm.
that goes with it because like you said, people just they're like, "Oh no, I don't do that. Oh no, I would never do that." And it always seems like a hidden addiction or a hidden thing if people just do it in general, not they're not addicted, but and can you explain to us like where that shame comes from and maybe how people can combat that shame?
Well, I think that most of us, especially our age, or even the kids that we're raising, my kids now are 22 and 25. Um, I think that we were raised with a level of shame, with a level of shame towards our bodies. I think that's just in the, from while there was free love in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, there was still a lot of not free love. It might look good on Woodstock documentaries, but that's not the life my parents were leading back here in Maine at the time. There were still so many of these taboos. If whatever religion you were, you didn't touch your body. You weren't naked. Whatever religion or belief system you had, people had a lot more back then, or uh, penchant towards religion was you don't do this stuff. This is a sin. You go to hell. And I think that, what kind of person has to touch themselves down there? That's where crazy gross people touch themselves. That's where criminals and molesters touch themselves. And good people don't master. Good people don't have to see pictures or movies of naked people. Are you a good person or not? Mom and dad are good people. Grandma, grandpa are good people. Your teachers are good people. Those kids you go to school with are good people. And that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I became a porn addict at 1988 when I was 12 years old. And all I really knew at that point was naked people have something to do with sex. This feels really good. And everything I've been taught says I shouldn't be doing this.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
can't tell anybody about it. Thankfully, that's actually starting to change. Older Gen Zers do have open conversations with each other about pornography. They're not always the best conversations, but at least they're talking, because the millennials didn't do that. The Xers didn't do that. Certainly the boomers and beyond weren't doing that. And I think that the world has just changed so fast from generation to generation when it comes to sexuality, sexual mores, that, like most people, 11, 12, 13, 14, you find this stuff. It feels good. It's fun to watch. You don't think about it because you're a kid.
Yeah.
And then you depend more on it and depend more on it. And you realize pornography can make a bad day okay.
Right.
But then you realize it can make an okay day pretty good. But enough years of it, it doesn't have any response anymore. And much like the alcoholic or the smoker, you have to use just to have a normal day.
Right.
And it's only at that point where you're like, oh, looking at these people, seeing them do this stuff on screen, touching myself while I was watching this. Oh my goodness, I'm addicted to this now. I get no benefit from this that I used to. And now I just feel horrible. Now, oh my, what did I'm a porn addict. Oh my, because I can't stop this. What kind of person am I? You go back to that training you had as a kid. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm a porn addict. That means I'm a bad person. I'm evil. I'm gross. You know, a lot of people will tell me, well, I'm married. I can't be a porn addict. Sure, you can, you know, or I'm a woman, so I don't think I can be a porn addict. You got working equipment down there and you got working equipment up here, just like the rest of us. So yeah, of course. Of course you can. And
Yeah.
every year I see my number of female pornography clients double. As it's starting to be understood, this is not just a man's disease. But that's part of it. Oh my God, I'm a woman who uses this stuff. I know guys use it, but what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me as a woman? What's wrong with me as a person of God? What's wrong with me as a Democrat or Republican? What's wrong with me as the son of a preacher? What's wrong with me as this or that? And when I sit with people in my coaching, no matter who they are, usually the first little bit we have to get through is you use this stuff because you had to. And much, much tougher than figuring out how do you quit using is why did you become a porn addict in the first place? That's far more important to understand.
Yeah.
You can starve yourself from porn very easily, just like you starve yourself in a diet. But if you don't learn why you became that way, if you don't make some actual lifestyle changes, some actual mindset changes, you're going to be hung out to dry. So the first thing I try to do with my clients is, this is not 1995 anymore. Nobody's going to look at you sideways. We know that 3 out of 5 women look at porn, 9 out of 10 men look at porn. You're more rare if you don't these days. So you don't have to feel like a freak. Everybody is doing this. And I think that one of the reasons that my coaching works is because it only takes people about 5-10 minutes to recognize, I'm not going to judge you. I don't know how you got here. We'll talk about it, but I got there too. Whatever you've seen, I probably saw twice. So how am I going to judge you for that? I know it doesn't make me any worse of a person all these years later, now that I'm sober. I was sick. You're sick too. Let's figure out why. And Shame, embarrassment, judging, that's never going to come from me because that would make me a hypocrite. Because I wasn't a pervert, I wasn't a bad person, and I'm just going to assume that you're not either. So once people recognize I'm not going to stereotype them, I'm not going to say anything negative, I'm probably going to make jokes that make them laugh. Um, it's a much more comfortable environment. Seeing people in a first session, they show up like their eyes in deer, their eyes are like in headlights.
No, yeah, yeah.
And but once they realize I'm not judging them, they can say the word masturbate 500 times. I don't flinch. And that we can have this conversation. By the end of the session, they are much more relaxed. They feel good because for the first time in their life, they spent an hour talking about this problem that they had, and they're not talking to someone who's going to judge them. They're talking to someone who's trying to help them. And that's an awesome, awesome thing to watch when I have people for the first time really oh, wow, not everybody's going to treat me like a freak if I mention this.
Yeah, that's very important. I feel like, people want to be validated. They want their feelings to mean something, and that's so important. And can you talk more about that?
Well, it's about understanding again, why did you start? Now, I think of a woman I've been working with now for a couple years. We're long beyond the porn thing. At this point, it's more just check-ins. But for a couple of years, she was dealing with a pornography addiction where she had used almost every day going back to 13, 14 years old. So we started looking at what was happening in her life at that time. When did she have other spikes in this time? And really looking at the data, talking to her, throwing things out there, we recognize that ultimately she used pornography or used it at its greatest when she felt most alone or least seen in her life. She started at 14 years old when her mom allowed her brother's family to move into the house, which was like 8 extra people. And they already had a big family of, I think, 6 people. So suddenly 14 people are living in her house. The only thing she has is her room. She was getting no attention from anybody.
Mhm.
She stumbled upon pornography and 10 years ago. Like so many people, she just Googled the word boobs. That's the
Mhm.
number one story I hear from
Yep.
I heard something at school and I went home and I put boobs into Google and there I was. Um, she, at times, when she was new into the military, she
Mhm.
saw it spike. When she moved from California to Virginia and didn't know anybody, it spiked.
Mhm.
So she has been using pornography as a coping mechanism for loneliness or not being paid attention to. So what we had to do is start to look at, well, why was this the answer? How could you have been attended to better? These days, when you feel an urge, is it tied to that?
Yeah. Oh, that.
And working through it slowly. Well, I mean, getting somebody to quit, this is what I was getting somebody to quit is not that difficult because all you're doing is starving them. And I put it in this analogy of let's say that you're one of those people on one of those lifetime shows or whatnot where you're grossly obese, 600, 700 pounds. Uh, you could go on a diet for a month. Let's say candy is your thing. You decide not to eat candy for a month. You drop 30 pounds. Great job. That's awesome. On day 31, do you think you still don't like candy? Do you think you don't want candy? All you've done is starve yourself. All you've done is fast. And that's why I try to tell, especially younger men, when they're like, well, my best streak is 22 days. I'm currently on an 8-day streak. And it's like, great. Don't you still really want to watch? Yes, it's very different. That you're white knuckling. And I got to tell you, 99% of the time, that won't work. you're going to, just like that obese person on day 31 still loves candy. Well, that's great. You haven't used porn for 30 days. On day 31, do you know why you loved it? Do you know why you still feel you need it? Do you know on a chemical level what it was doing for you and why? That's the stuff that we have to go back and look at, um, and understand and process. Because once you process it, unresolved trauma becomes resolved.
Right.
Can't change the fact stuff happened, but you can learn to deal with it. You can understand, oh, wow, I'm afraid of crowds now because when I was 12, this happened.
Right.
And now I avoid crowds. And that's a lot of what it is. I tell people I'm going to have them tell me their life story for the first time as a nonfiction story because we mainly are the stories we tell ourselves. And it's time to tell yourself the nonfiction version.
Yes, yes. Oh, I definitely agree. And more like I love what you said about going back and finding out what happened because so many times, I feel like people are just like, "Why did you do that? Why did you do that?" Yeah, I don't understand. And that may be true, but instead you need to reframe it as what happened to you to cause you to do
Yes.
that.
Yes. I almost use that exact line. I say it's not a matter of what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's a matter of what happened to you. And I also toss in quickly, listen, we're not here to blame your parents. If they were not given skills to be a parent, how could they be a good parent? We're not blaming them. We're just finding out what happened in your story
Right. Right.
and adjusting it. But no, we're not pointing the finger at anybody because nobody is going to look at a 3-year-old child and say, "Yeah, this one's going to be a porn addict. We got to raise them that way." No,
Yeah.
it just happens, and plenty of good parents raise porn addicts like mine did. Plenty of good parents raise alcoholics like mine did. It's just that some stuff happened to me that was traumatic along the way that had nothing to do with them, but because of shame, because of fear, I hid that all from them. I didn't get any mental help when I was young. Again, being the early and mid 80s, you only went to a therapist if you were actually crazy. And because we still didn't talk about mental health back then.
Right.
So I certainly wasn't going to try to make myself look crazy. I was going to keep my mouth shut like a smart person knows how to do. And unfortunately, a lot of times you keep your mouth shut. It's not the smart thing to do. And I was a porn addict for 24 years. I was an alcoholic for 22 years before I went to get help. Rehab was the most transitional and wonderfully transformative experience in my life. And after that, I said, there are people who can't afford rehab. There are people who don't have the resources or the time. They need to be able to still understand this stuff. And that's when I started writing. That's when I started going on social media. And while I planned on being just an author and a presenter, it was when the pandemic hit
Mhm.
that a couple of friends of mine who are in the industry said, "You really should get certified as a coach because you're not going to be traveling anywhere for a while, getting paid to give speeches." Um, it's like, that's true. So if I want to stay in this area, I have to figure something else out. I started to do this, and lo and behold, I feel like coaching is what I was meant to do. I feel like my whole life, I can point to all the different pieces of my life leading up to me finally in my mid 40s, becoming a pornography addiction coach, becoming the betrayal trauma coach. This is what I was meant to do. Everything else was about skill gathering, and it makes sense to me now. It may not have made sense 20 years ago when I was doing something, but I see now it all makes sense. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to
Yeah, that's that post-traumatic wisdom that comes
be.
when you're
Yes.
in the middle of it, you don't see it, but
Well, you're just
afterwards
trying
you're
to
able to
survive.
reflect.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so about the other part of your coaching, the betrayal and the couples
Mhm.
therapy. Can you explain what could affect a marriage or a relationship when you're talking about pornography?
Absolutely. In most of my situations that I deal with partners and even addicts themselves, if they are in a relationship, no matter whether it's 6 months, 6 years, or 16 years, if one of the people has a pornography issue, the partner probably had some kind of idea, but the person with the addiction kept saying no, kept lying, say they don't do that, say they wouldn't do that, or the other person never catches on and they just keep going. Almost always, sometime early in the relationship, there was a conversation of, I don't want pornography to be part of this relationship. I don't want you satisfying yourself to images of other people, anything, something along those lines. And the person who was the addict completely ignored them because they went into the relationship as an addict. But the partner never couldn't see that because addicts are great at lying and hiding things. Um, so what happens is you get with somebody, you're pretty sure they're not into porn. You tell them you don't want them to be into porn. They say, okay. You form deep feelings. Maybe you get married. You got some kids, a house, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, why do we have 6 charges for OnlyFans on our credit card bill? Why, when I look at your phone, do I see Pornhub listed there 28 times in search history? Are you using porn? Oh no, one of my buddies at work grabbed that. Okay. Well, then it happens again. Then something else happens. Oh, a friend of mine just sent that to my email. And pretty soon it's very obvious you've got somebody who's a porn addict on there on your hands. And I will tell you that not 98% of the time, not 99% of the time, 100% of the time when I talk to a betrayed partner of a porn addict, it's not even that it was porn, it's that it was lying.
Oh, wow.
The biggest problem is not the porn, it's the lying. That's where the betrayal is. Because when, and I'm going to say 90% of the time I work with women of male porn addicts. Working with a woman, uh, traditionally, there's 3 stages. The first, when you discover your partner is a porn addict and he's been lying to you about it, you wonder what you did wrong. Am I not as pretty as I used to be? Do I not dress as sexy? Am I not as good in bed as I once was? You wonder what you've done wrong to turn him into a porn addict when that's not scientifically what happened at all. Odds are he had this well before he ever met you. Um, the next stage is usually when people show up at my doorstep, and that is, how do I ever trust him again? How do I ever trust him again? Because if he's lied to me for, say, 10 years about this, well, what else did he lie about that I believe? If he lied to my face so convincingly about this, does he have another family? Every person he mentions from work in his stories, are they real? What else is he doing with our finance? Does he actually make the money he says? And once you start, I can't trust anything he's ever said. Also, how do I trust anything he says moving forward? That's really where the crux of being stuck in the betrayal trauma is that I would like to move forward and trust him again. I would like to move forward and see him getting the help that he needs. I would like to move forward and be a unit again who actually communicates honestly this time. And that's very difficult to traverse. Um, there's a lot more emotion dealing with betrayed clients or dealing with couples, one betrayed, one addict, than there is just dealing with addicts because you truly have a victim when it comes to a betrayed partner. We can say you're a victim or not of your addiction, and I think there's arguments either way that you can make, But when you are with somebody, lying to save your butt, lying to keep things the same, lying so you are not pointed out as the pervert or the dysfunctional human that you feel you are deep inside, but you have too much shame to talk about it.
Right.
One of the greatest lines my wife ever said to me was shortly after I got out of rehab. I mentioned to her that I had come to the recognition that I've always had trouble talking about sex with my partner. And she said to me, I'm your wife. You should be able to talk to me about anything. If you want to have sex and you want to add two girls into the mix and you want to have, somebody videotaping all of us and you want to get a mariachi band in there playing and you want to invite some little people dressed as leprechauns to throw fish sticks at us while we're doing it, you can ask. The answer is hell no. Hell no to all of that. But you should be able to ask. You should be able to talk to me about this stuff. I'm not going to leave you if you come up to me and say, hey, I have a video game problem. Hey, I have a cigarette problem. You have a porn problem. You had a porn problem. I know it's not a disgusting, sexually charged human problem because I never was that in real life. And most porn addicts are not hypersexual, oversexed people.
Right.
And that made me really realize that communication and trust needs to be the number one thing. I need to tell my wife the craziest thing I could imagine to do, and she needs to be able to have the space to say, I don't think so. And then we keep going forward, and it's all good. And that was never part of my life until that time. And that's why I love to work with couples on communication, on how they talk about the tough things, because most of us avoid conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like that's with any relationship, not
Yeah,
just marriage or
yeah.
romantic relationships. We just don't like conflict at all, right?
Well, we don't like the consequences. If I tell you what I think, you might, oh my God, he's a pervert. He's crazy. How did he hide this from me for so long? I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
You don't go and tell your boss off because, oh, they have power over me and they could make me lose my job even though they're being an idiot.
Right. Yes.
I'm not going to prompt conflict with the police because they're at a higher level than I am when it comes to what the consequences can be. We avoid conflict in life, and we certainly avoid conflict when it comes to sex and sexuality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I did want to ask, like, do you have any advice to give to people that maybe do have a partner that has a pornography problem?
Number one, you can never force them to get help. You can't. And if they feel forced, like their arm is being twisted to get help, um, it probably won't work if they don't understand the problem and want help on their own. So you may have to, number one, introduce the idea there's a problem. That's what just introduce the idea. Hey, you seem to watch a lot of porn. Hey, you seem to go to the bathroom a lot with your phone and don't come out for half an hour. Can I see your browser history? If you ask your partner, can I see your browser history? And they say no, well, it doesn't take a mathematician to recognize that the formula is because they have something they don't want you to see. Probably browser history, maybe some text, who knows? But that should be a giant red flag. And you know that person better than anybody else. If you want the best possible outcome, regardless of what you feel about pornography, you cannot shame them. You have to give them a safe place to be. You came down on me. Well, what kind of person looks at porn? What were you even looking at? Tell me what you were looking at. And how do you feel about yourself? I'm not going to share anything with you. You don't make me feel safe. You don't make me feel like I'm protected. So if you have a partner, you need to make them feel like they're in a very safe environment to learn about this, to explore it, to talk about it. And what you also need to do as a partner is to create certain boundaries. And they can be whatever you want. No more pornography in this house. I don't want you, no more social media, no more. You can have whatever lines you want. He does or she doesn't have to listen to them, but you can have boundaries for your safety and consequences. There will be no more looking at porn in this house, and you will allow me to look at your browser history whenever I want. And 2 days later, I want to see your browser history. I'm not showing you. Okay, well, then you're going to be on the couch, or I'm not going to be kissing you on the lips for the next week, or we're not going to have sex, or maybe I'm not going to cook you dinner, or just something to show that I'm serious about this. And the one thing that I always urge partners is to do it with kindness, not maliciousness. This is not a you break this rule, you have this punishment. And if you also can't enforce your boundaries, don't make them. Don't be, if I catch you using this, I'm out the door. And the moment you catch him and you're not out the door, your word doesn't mean a thing. Just like his word doesn't mean a thing now, your word doesn't mean a thing. So if you're going to put boundaries in place, if you're going to create a new system and see if and one of those boundaries could be you have to go to 2 12-step meetings a week, or you have to talk to a therapist a few times. One of the biggest reasons I get men from 40 to 60 is because their wives have pushed them to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're just like, well, let's just get this done. So you don't care. No, I don't have a porn addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess the money spends the same either way, but you really want to look at this, sir. And you really want to look at your marriage and what's important. Because at the base of it, it's not about addiction. It's not about making people. It's about the relationship. It's about the communication. If my wife said to me, I love candy bars. If my wife said to me, you cannot have Milky Ways anymore. I don't want you, it hurts my heart. Like many wives or girlfriends, it hurts my heart when you look at it. It makes me feel, whether you're an addict or not, it just makes me feel bad. So please stop. That should be enough in a caring, loving relationship. If my wife said to me, I don't want you ever to touch Milky Ways ever again. You can have Hershey bars, you can have the crackle bars, you can have almond joy, but please, I don't want you to have any more Milky Way. It hurts my heart. I may not understand that fully, but because this is my partner who I am, supposedly devoting my life to, guess what? I'm not going to eat Milky Ways anymore because it upsets her so much. So there's also that aspect to this where I'm not dealing with addiction. And many of the couples I deal with, the porn addict is not a full-blown addict, but they don't see the reason they need to quit. And a lot of times it's as simple as saying, look at your partner. They say it hurts their feelings. They say it makes them sad. If you can tell me that masturbating to strangers that you find on the internet is more important than what your partner thinks and feels, I'll leave you alone. You just have to tell them as well.
Yeah. And that's, I get that. That's very good advice to give somebody. Because like you said, communication is important.
Right.
And I love that you said setting boundaries and make sure to stick to your boundaries, because so many times I feel like people say things like, if you do that again, I'm going to leave you, or something like that, which is such a high boundary,
Yeah.
and most people don't do that. And then
No.
what does it mean? I'm going to do whatever I want.
You're right. Well, if you're not going to leave me.
Yeah.
So you keep talking, I'll keep nodding, and then I'll keep doing what I want because you don't have it in you to change. So I don't need to have it in me to change.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
you're too scared of being alone, and I know this, so I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
The devil of being with me is better than the unknown devil or angel of being alone.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. And I really like what you said before, and I didn't comment on it before, but now I was thinking, you were talking about how, when people recognize that they have an addiction, a porn addiction, the first step was, what did I do? What's wrong with me? And it seems like people always turn it, if I'm understanding you correctly, then everybody always turns it inwardly, that
Right.
they're the problem. And
Well, and
that's
unfortunately, there are a lot of men, probably about a third of them, who will also directly say, it's because you've let yourself go. It's because you don't look at the way you don't look the way you once did. These guys are going to be in denial that anything is wrong with them, that they have to think about anything being wrong with them because they're so scared to death of it. They will go down fighting, claiming you're the problem because you wear pants and not dresses. And the problem isn't the stuff that happened to them when they were 9 years old that they're still too scared to talk about.
oh wow, yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they don't, and again, think about this. If you are 13 years old and this becomes your coping method, like it did with me, well, there's a real problem at 18. There's a real problem at 25. There's a real problem at 30. You don't know how to deal with the world on the world's terms. So, a bad day at school, a bad day at work, a bad day of family life, whatever it is, the only way I can handle this, that I've learned to handle this, is to retreat and use pornography. That's my one coping tool. That's why so much of recovery is about developing these other tools. It's about figuring out, who do you want to be? When people say, how long will recovery take me? Well, how long do you plan to be alive? Because it'll probably be the rest of your life. This isn't a broken leg that fixes itself, that heals in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. This is mental health. This is long term trauma. This is a process of peeling the layers back. And there is no blood test for this stuff. You have to, I can tell you why I'm an addict, why I became an addict. I can tell you how I was coping. I can tell you all of these, but I can't tell you through a blood test. I've just had to accept this stuff happened to me. This is how I dealt with it. This is how I should have dealt with it. And there are a lot of guys who have trouble with that. I remember when I was in my rehab for pornography and sex addiction, there was a guy there. And, a good old boy from Oklahoma, cowboy, exactly the type. He was, for me, kind of an off putting guy the first week I met him. And then finally, in one of our sessions, he broke down crying, talking about how he was taken advantage of by one of his club leaders or 4-H leaders or something when he was young. And he had never told anybody, his mom, his dad, his wife, anybody. And he was this big cowboy, just a sobbing mess in his chair because he finally said this stuff out loud. And it scared him to the point that he repressed it so much that his final stop was rehab. And if you're at the point where you have to go to rehab, like I did, like he did, like thousands of us do, there is a real problem there that you're avoiding. And when you face that problem, you have to go back and face it as that 7-year-old, as that 12-year-old, because you've never developed any skills to deal with it in a healthy way. You would run to your addiction. And after a session with pornography, well, I'm feeling better. I guess I'm not going to dwell on the bad stuff.
Oh, yes, yes. Um, uh, that's, I wanted to ask, so you're talking about like things that happened in your past, like uh childhood
Yeah.
or adolescence. But what if, have you ever had clients that maybe in the middle of their life or their adulthood that they've developed this addiction,
Yeah.
and can you kind of explain how that's possible? It you know
I don't think it is, because I have seen, I mean, aside from going through my own recovery and from researching it more than anybody I've ever met, and having now dealt with probably about 700 clients in nearly 6 years, I
Mhm.
have never seen anybody fully become a porn addict after 18. They
After
may not recognize it till long after. They
mhm.
may not understand it till long after, but the seeds are there. Because the problems you're going to face as a 17-year-old, as a 22-year-old, as a 28-year-old, you either have those coping skills or you don't by that point. The only caveat I'll put on this is that the people are very good at transferring one addiction to another. One of the things I have to watch for with my young clients is that they don't get into video games or drinking to get the same reaction. With my older clients, it's more drinking, but it could also go the same way. If you were trying to quit drinking, if you were trying to quit smoking cigarettes, well, you could still go get your dopamine and all those happy chemicals by looking at porn or by gambling or by getting on, smoking a lot of marijuana. It's very easy to transfer your addictions. And that's when I'm talking to couples, that's one of the things I have to point out is we're not trying to get him to quit porn. We're trying to get him to quit the addict lifestyle. Because frankly, if he stops watching porn and he starts sitting in front of the TV 6 hours a day playing video games, ignoring you, is that any better? Maybe you'll feel better because he's not looking at naked people. But again, as an addict, it's not about the naked people, it's about the chemistry. And a lot of times the betrayed partner has to have that explain that I know you would rather he be addicted to comic books than to naked people, but it really doesn't matter in the mind of an addict. So honestly, I've never met anybody who was a healthy person and then around 28 just became, or 35 just became a porn addict. Haven't met a single person. It's almost always there from the early days. And those people who end up as addicts, it only takes 2 or 3 times of seeing it before they recognize something's different. When I was 12 years old and my cousin showed me those magazines for the first time, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, life is different now. Something is different now. And once I found a store a year and a half later that would sell me alcohol and sell me pornography magazines, once I found a video store when Blockbuster and all those started to put the moms and pops out of business, I
Mhm.
found a struggling mom and pop that would rent porno videos to me every day. So from 14 years old to 18 years old, if I didn't have something to do after school, I rode to the video store, got a couple adult films. I'd ride to the convenience store that would sell beer to me. I would pick up 4 beers. I don't know why I just didn't get a 6 pack, but I'd pick up 4 beers individually. I guess I thought I looked clever that way. And these people were not carding anybody. So I would be driving my bike home from school, and you could hear the porno videos and the beer just clanking around in my backpack. And that was 23 years before I ever got help.
Wow.
So it's there for a long time. And the thing is, porn addiction, oh, that's easy to hide.
Yeah.
Everybody knew I was an alcoholic. You slur, you smell, you stumble, you say dumb stuff. Your emotions are heightened, whether it's happy or sad. You cannot hide being an alcoholic very well. Being a porn addict, pretty simple to hide.
Oh, wow.
Somebody has to go digging to discover you're a porn addict if you don't want them to find out. And if you are not careless.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big or one of the real tough parts about the pornography addiction. You don't see the physical outward behavior that you see with people who have chemical dependency.
Oh, yeah. So it makes it harder to recognize
Right.
for either person
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
relationship. But even
Exactly.
those who maybe not in a relationship, but the people around them still don't see.
Exactly. And that was the thing was when I finally decided to get help, I recognized I had to quit alcohol and porn at the same time. If I tried to do one or the other, it would have just dovetailed. They always worked in concert together. I knew the only way that I could do it was to quit both at the same time. And that was incredibly difficult, but there was no option. And that's why I tell people is that if I can quit a 24-year and a 22-year addiction, respectively, with the porn and the alcohol. If I can quit at the same time, and here we are 11 and a half years later, and I have not relapsed once, anybody can quit one addiction and not. You just have to have the tools, you just have to have the mindset, and you can do this. And I am living proof of it.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's great. Um, so we're about out of time, but I just wanted to see, is there anything, maybe like techniques or ideas or resources that you'd like to share with our listeners that are struggling with this?
Well, the number one thing I would like to say, Melody, that I still face several years after doing this is the tendency for people to try to somehow exclude themselves from the criteria of possibly being a porn addict. You may have a vagina, but you may still be a porn addict. You may have different color skin than me, but you may still be a porn addict. You may be 30 years old or 30 years younger. You may pray to a different God. You may vote for a different president, but there is no bit of demographic information that disqualifies from potentially being a porn addict. And if you think you have a porn addict, there are enough people out there like me who will not judge you, who want to help you, that you cannot make an excuse anymore to not deal with it. If you think you're a porn addict, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's no excuse to not talk to somebody like me, go to a 12-step group or go to a therapist or simply jump on YouTube and look at some videos to figure out where you really are. And number two, try to be on health. I think more than any problem in this world, people lying to themselves to tell themselves what they need to hear to get through the day. I think that's done more damage to our world than anything else. Know who you are and own it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
I mean, well, I'll tell you, I don't touch porn anymore. I don't touch alcohol anymore, but I still drink 3 caffeine drinks a day. I know they're not good for me. And I have told people if I die anytime soon of a heart attack, you are free to stand around my casket and say, we told you so, because at least I own it. If
Right.
you can own your stuff, and I will deal with my caffeine addiction, I'm not ready yet. If my wife said, I'm going to leave you if you don't, I would. But compared to what else I put her through, caffeine's not a big deal. But the best thing I think that you can do as an individual is own it. and not just own what's bad, own what's good. So many people are so humble or don't want to be seen as sticking their head up out of the crowd. And when you look in the mirror in the morning, do not see a superhero who was sent to save us all. And do not see the biggest bag of trash that has ever walked the planet. Because I guarantee you, you are neither of those things. You're somewhere in the middle because you're a complex human. Own your victories, own your losses, and change what you need.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so I want to ask Joshua, if we're wanting to like go to your website or get in contact with you somehow, how would we do that?
Best place to go. I've got plenty of social media and all that stuff. But if you want to see it all, if you want to learn all the contacts, if you want to book with me, my website is that corn coach, CORN, because that's the code word we have to use on social media. Because God forbid you put the word porn there, you're going to send the world into a tailspin. So we have to use the word corn on social media as our code word. So you will find me at thatcorncoach.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. This was so wonderful and just so much knowledge and wisdom here. And thank you for sharing with us.
And the only other thing I want to add, whether you're a partner or your parents or you're a teacher, I want you to recognize that Melody and I just talked about porn for an hour and it never approached an R rating.
Yeah.
We can talk about pornography without talking about the content. We can talk about the problem and the issue without making it lewd and lascivious. This is a real problem we face, but we can be grown-ups talking about it.
Oh, that's so good because I feel like a lot of people are just so full of shame about how do I talk about it and how would I say, it's still, I remember being a child and my parents were like, well, let me tell you about the birds and the bees. Well, why can't you just say, let me tell you about sex?
Yeah,
And it's still okay to say sex. And I think some people are still at that, I don't know.
right, right. It's what's wrong? Sex is great. Here's the proof. We're all here.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
nothing wrong with sexuality. And that's what I also tell people is that we are not trying to make you asexual or non-sexual with the pornography addiction coaching. We're trying to make you healthy sexual because healthy sexuality is wonderful. It's part of your life. It's like creativity. It's like compassion. It's one of your traits that makes you who you are. It's never a bad thing. You just have to look at it through a healthy lens.
Oh, yes, yes. I like that. Changing the perspective of how we look at things.
Yeah, and like I said, we did not talk about anything
No.
dirty in pornography. And a lot of people, a lot of podcast hosts start their podcasts with me of, well, I got to give a warning on this one. We don't know where it's going to go.
Hmm.
I'm not going to describe, disturbing sex acts to people because
Yeah,
that's not what the addiction is about.
yeah,
When I was 12 years old, I wasn't able to get into casinos to gamble. I didn't even know where to go get hard drugs.
right,
What was a kid like me going to do other than find a place to buy a porn magazine?
right, right.
I wasn't going to get into drugs at 12. I didn't know where to get them. I was, whatever issues I was facing that I needed relief, I went with what was there, what was easy. And now that we give every 10-year-old kid the best porn computer in the history of the world, known as the smartphone, there has to be some instruction with it, like it or not. I'm sorry. It's just, we're getting into the mid 20th, 21st century. This is just the way it is.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you talk about this in such a human way. And and bring humanity to this addiction, because I feel like it's so important for people to see, porn addicts as human beings. Yeah.
And again, like I said, to explain healthy sexuality, guess what? After all of this, I still like boobs.
Oh, there you go.
And you know what? That's healthy. As a heterosexual male, that's healthy. That's where I should be.
Yes.
I'm not knocking down heaven and earth to see them, to calm myself.
Right.
But I still like them because that's part of my healthy sexuality.
Yes.
And that's where people need to get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joshua, for coming to be with us. And you're always welcome back. I'd
Thank you.
love to have you back anytime. You
Absolutely.
gave us
Thank you so much for inviting me. I love this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you. And just so that everybody knows, you do not have to suffer alone. So thank you for listening.